working paper, which is working paper 4 by the Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, Working Paper 4 presents the developments regarding System-Wide Information Management, or SWIM, and the work that still needs to be done to establish a robust foundation of standards and recommended practices, together with explicit guidance material to ensure the interoperability of information systems and harmonization of procedures for the global exchange of information. It is recognized that the aviation community is increasingly interconnected and dependent on information that can be trusted. Information that is shared on a system-wide basis for making collaborative decisions to meet the present and future operational needs of all stakeholders. As such, the Global Air Navigation Plan recognizes SWIM as a key enabler for the evolution of an increasingly complex aviation ecosystem. The paper highlights that one of the objectives of SWIM is to support higher levels of automation and to foster machine-to-machine interaction. It acknowledges that in an increasingly automated environment, the human is still part of the management of the system and should remain the ultimate authority in operationally significant decision-making processes. The paper lists some of the elements of what may constitute SWIM-compliant solutions, including harmonization of information exchange models, interconnected registries, policy-based governance, an implementation toolbox of basic SWIM information services, and pointed out some of the challenges of transitioning from today's point-to-point message-based paradigm to a networked information services-based SWIM environment. Proposed actions are contained in paragraph 3.3. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary. I now invite the Republic of Korea to present Working Paper 236. Okay, I'm sorry, the Republic of Korea is not here at the moment, so we'll come back to that paper and invite South Africa to present Working Paper 291.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The Working Paper 291, I've got a pleasure to present Working Paper 291 on behalf of South Africa. This paper provides a brief overview of SWIM as defined in the GAN, and listed aspects stakeholders would need to take into consideration when developing their various plans. SWIM, as we know, is an integral part of achieving the GAN and performance improvement areas as contained in the ASBU modules. SWIM is defined in the manual of the SWIM concept itself, that is the ICAO document 10039. As per the SWIM manual definition, SWIM is based on the standardized data information exchange models, infrastructure and communication networks capable of exchanging high volumes of quality and timely information. The standardized data models identified for use within the aviation community to exchange data or information are as listed in paragraph 2.2. Although there are various systems applications within South Africa itself, such as the air traffic management systems, your AI systems, and airspace flight procedure design applications, these systems are capable of exchanging information in AIXM in accordance with the provision of Annex 15. The The AF Implementation Infrastructure Subgroup, which is a subgroup under APEC, has listed AIXM as one of the key projects to achieve within the AFI region, and some of the challenges that are contained in 2.5, which have been identified by the subgroup itself. There are various exchange modules being developed and will eventually form part of the ATM information reference module as defined in the GAMP. In conclusion, Mr. Chairperson, although all these various exchange modules are being developed, data ownership, data provision, data usage rules should be facilitated by developing and implementing a SWIM governance model, as interoperability affects almost all stakeholders and their interaction within the ATM system. Rules, roles, and responsibilities needs to be clearly defined per stakeholder, considering the functional criticality of the information they manage. It is vitally important that computer systems and service utilized in the ATM network be linked to exchange information without any human intervention, and that both service providers and service consumers understand and interpret the exchange information in the same manner to allow different organizations to achieve their respective goals. The recommendations, Chairperson, is in paragraph 4.1. I thank you.
Well, thank you, South Africa. May we ask the Republic of Korea to present working paper 236?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Working paper 236 presented by the Republic of Korea is presenting information for development notes and review on capability of each XM and highlights the necessity of comparability between different XM versions. Republic of Korea would like to share information and discuss how to cope with this issue through this conference. ATM management system will be increasingly reliant on the accurate and timely information which must be organized and provided by solutions that support SIM-wide interoperability and secure the seamless information access and exchange. Information exchange models provide common syntax and semantics of information exchanges so that SIM users can understand exchanged information. And there are currently 3 information exchange models used in the SIM: AIXM, FIXM, and IWXSM. SIM operational concept and each information services are still in development. Accordingly, XMs should be updated to reflect newly introduced operational concept and new information services. However, the complete information exchange is not ensured at the moment using different XM versions by a producer and user. This working paper 236 explains the reason why the review on the comparability between different versions is required. When a SIM is implemented without any comparability between different versions of XMs, an additional implementation of a converter would be required to exchange information. And this will result in a complexity of management, additional cost, and validation of conversion. In case such an introduction of a converter is inevitable for specific circumstantial regions, mapping guidance against the major changes or updates should be developed for the effective implementation of the converter. As a result, XM's elements should be distinguished into non-changeable and changeable elements and determine non-changeable elements as soon as possible to minimize the issue of the comparability in SIM implementation and Mapping guidance have to be offered when there is a major changes or update to implement a converter efficiently. In conclusion, the conference is invited to agree to the recommendation in paragraph 3.1. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The next paper is Working Paper 75 by Australia and New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. System-wide information management is one of the easiest to understand acronyms ever invented in aviation, SWIM. However, its development and implementation is far more challenging. Working Paper 75, prepared in close consultation with our friends and colleagues from New Zealand, outlines the challenges facing the achievement and maintenance of a globally harmonised SWIM. These challenges are outlined in our paper at 2.2, and there are many. Nevertheless, a globally harmonised SWIM is a prerequisite for delivering the operational benefits of a seamless system that was originally envisaged back in a GATMOC document drafted many years ago. Momentum is required, and it's going to require the work of ICAO, which I think will have to show very strong stewardship, and by all states participating actively in the development and coordination of SWIM through both at the regional and at the global level. I recommend the recommendations from the paper are outlined in paragraph 3.2 for harmonising SWIM. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia and New Zealand. I now invite New Zealand to present Working Paper 70.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present Working Paper 70 on behalf of New Zealand. The paper presents New Zealand's observations on considerations for SWIM utilisation, with particular reference to small states with aviation system characteristics similar to our own. The paper refers to the problems, present and future, that SWIM may help to address, the opportunities and the challenges that SWIM presents, and the case for flexibility, for efficiency, and for harmonisation. New Zealand conducted a mapping exercise using the Trans-Tasman route between Australia and New Zealand, and through that exercise identified 4 main issues that SWIM could help to address: access to airspace, inflexible airspace allocation, the large amount of information which is currently not readily accessible in the right forms at the right time to the right people, rapid technological change, including the introduction of new entrants and technologies into the aviation system. These results suggested that SWIM may be more effective or most effective if applications developers can use mainstream technologies and data exchange standards underpinned by harmonised definitions and standards. New Zealand acknowledges and supports the work ICAO is undertaking with regard to SWIM, and we invite the conference to consider the recommendations in the paper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my presentation of Working Paper 70.
Thank you, New Zealand. May I ask the United States to present Working Paper 73?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a need for a global SWIM framework that utilizes the advancements and innovations of not only governments, but the private aviation sector, and especially other industries, which enables interoperable exchange of information is increasing. The framework needs to establish governance and processes that can be implemented worldwide, regardless of current and modernization and development status. The establishment of a global SWIM framework entails activities that can be applied at different levels: national, regional, global, and organizational. These activities include the establishment of a common set of performance-based standards, policies and processes for SWIM information services, and technical infrastructure, the definition and establishment of governance structures, promotion of information interoperability among stakeholders, and especially guidance material for the establishment and use of SWIM services, and for the definition of a transition to a SWIM environment through regional arrangements. A global SWIM framework provides the digital foundation for our future aviation development. As air traffic management strives to become more predictable and efficient through trajectory-based operations, collaborative and transparent information sharing on a digital platform will reduce constraints and accommodate different users with varied capabilities and performance requirements. To remind ourselves, these users will include piloted aircraft operations, UAS, as well as futuristic new users and operations only dreamed of today. It is imperative that private and non-aviation industries also be consulted. Non-aviation industries have already innovated and implemented global digital platforms and frameworks. Many of these advancements can be directly applicable to aviation, while others offer lessons learned. The conference is invited to endorse the concept of a global SWIM framework as part of the Global Air Navigation Plan and Aviation System Block upgrades, work with ICAO expert groups to ensure interoperability for global access to aviation-related information, and agree to work within ICAO regions to develop interconnected, trusted global SWIM frameworks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now invite Kenya to present Working Paper 106.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon again. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this Working Paper 106 on behalf of Kenya. Title of the paper, Establishment of COMESA Seamless Upper Airspace Requires System-Wide Information Management as a Key Enabler. The program for establishing a seamless upper airspace in the common market for Eastern Southern Africa region requires interoperable systems with harmonized procedures for the seamless exchange of information within and across the flight information region boundaries. SWIM has thus been identified as a key enabler for achieving seamless upper airspace operations over the COMESA region. This paper emphasizes the need for ICAO to develop the necessary SAPs and guidance material to ensure the envisaged regional seamless skies are supported by globally harmonized and efficient exchange of information. Chair, in introducing this particular paper, we looked at COMESA as a regional trading bloc that was established to achieve sustainable economic and social progress among 16 member states within the ICAO AFI region, and air transport is a driver towards realization of this economic gain envisaged by a regional community. It is good to note that the program initiative is to establish a seamless upper airspace above flight level 245 over the FIRs of the COMESA region. This will facilitate CNS ATM operations in contiguous airspace that is technically and procedurally interoperable, universally safe, and in which all categories of airspace users will transit without requiring a considered action to facilitate that transition and without any noticeable change in either type or quality of service received and navigation and communication performance standards. The program will therefore facilitate implementation of key GAN enablers, namely TBO and FFIs within the region. Paragraph 2.5 transition from AIS to AIM was expected to achieve, among other objectives, the adoption of a standardized AIXM so as to ensure interoperability between all systems. However, the digital data set are still considered immature for implementation under SWIM. And the data originators not fully involved in the process to guarantee the required availability, quality, and integrity of the aeronautical data to be exchanged. Reference to paragraph 2.6 of the paper highlights challenges of transition from AIS to AIM across ICAO region states are still struggling with technological challenges compounded by the lack of global standards and requisite guidance and training material to facilitate the seamless exchange of information. Further to that, paragraph 2.7, implementation of AFICAD in ISAF and WACAF has also not gone without challenges. Here, incompatibilities range from different database models to differences in database implementation from various data vendors. Finally, the importance of SWIM leveraging existing and mature global technical standards cannot be overemphasized. A key factor in the success of standardization is choosing information technologies which are open source as prompted by one of the principles of service-oriented architecture. Another principle is the reusability of basic information services and the resulting ability to compose more complex services from these basic services, thereby further reducing system costs. In addition, reducing the number of variables when implementing SWIM will support interoperability when connecting to multiple systems, thus minimizing the need of having to develop multiple adaptations using specific software. The conference is therefore invited to agree to the recommendation in paragraph 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. I now invite the Secretariat to provide any clarifications on this agenda item. Okay, thank you. The floor is now open for discussion. Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Switzerland welcomes Working Paper 73, and we strongly support the concept of the global SWIM framework promoted by the United States. Thank you.
Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all. Norway supports the position of Kenya expressed in Working Paper 106. All regional ATM initiatives are to be supported by ICAO and global aviation community. However, we would like to mention that in our view, item C of the recommendation should not be understood that we expect ICAO to develop compliance monitoring. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Singapore is supportive of ICAO's proposal in Working Paper 4, and would like to highlight that Singapore and Thailand, with the assistance of the United States, are conducting a SWIM demonstration in the Association of Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN region, to showcase the operational benefit of SWIM and to promote regional awareness. Singapore would like to further note that several regions are already embarking on SWIM implementation and would like to request ICAO to publish implementation guidance material as early as possible, regardless of the availability of the subs, to ensure interoperability between regions. In addition, Singapore would like to highlight the need for a consolidated approach for global network connectivity and information security, and would support ICAO's initiative to look into these two areas to ensure global SWIM interoperability. Thank you.
Thank you, Singapore. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to all. I'm talking on my national identity now. We support the Secretariat paper number 4 and the ongoing work of ICAO. But I would like to underpin that SWIM is already much more than a concept. It has been implemented and used in several parts of the world, as in Europe, United States, and lately to the United Arab Emirates, as it is referred in the working paper 263. Hence, taking these points into account, we propose some changes on the recommendations text. So, in point A, we can reword a concept by implementation that reads request states to support the implementation. Then, in point B, after request ICAO, to add while making use of already developed standards and best practices, and then follows as it is to progress, etc. And finally, in point, wow. And finally, in point 3, after doc 139, we propose an addition as well as implementation best practices. Is that clear? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. It is clear. Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all. CANSO fully supports Working Paper 73 presented by the United States. As we indicated in Working Paper 171 that will be presented later this week under Agenda Item 5.4 in the cyber resilience, we support the SWIM concept. However, it should be developed and maintained in a cybersecurity culture and taking into account security by design and security by lifetime. SWIM is the future, but can only work in a trusted global SWIM framework. This working paper from the United States clearly outlines the preferred way forward to achieve this goal. We would like to thank the United States for its excellent paper. CANSO is ready to work with ICAO and the United States to ensure interoperability for global access to aviation-related information, as indicated in this paper. As to Working Paper 236 presented by the Republic of Korea, CANSO cannot fully support this. We understand the proposal for ICAO-managed converters, but that risks creating a potentially inefficient and rather technical approach to the problem. It does address the issue regarding IWXM, but we recommend that the development of a solution needs to be given a greater consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council. Iceland?
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support the Working Paper 236 presented by Korea. The further development of ICAO provisions that ensure compatibility is important in ensuring effective SWIM implementation. We would like to propose a change to the words in the recommendation from request ICAO to request ICAO and the international communities responsible for these exchange models. And we furthermore suggest that ICAO panels for information management, for ATM requirements and performance, and the MAT panel look further into the matter.
Thank you, Iceland. Ayata? Is IATA still requesting to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. IATA fully supports the need for increased sharing of information. In this regard, we believe the current limitations that prevent the sharing of data can be resolved through the implementation of SWIM. However, to be successful, SWIM implementation needs to be supported by a set of standards and harmonized procedures across regions. It should also be ensured that the numbers of registries is kept to a minimum, and as mentioned in Working Paper 106, they are all interconnected to facilitate information service discovery. We would also like to recall that SWIM is just an enabler, which can only be made functional if the information that is required is provided through it. Finally, in order to facilitate the transition, states should proceed with the testing of available systems that could be used to facilitate the translation of existing messages into SWIM services. Thank you.
Thank you. Poland?
Hello? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to support Working Paper 75 presented by Australia and New Zealand. Even if some of its proposals are covered already by ongoing work of ICAO, we agree with the overall concept of interoperability and harmonization. Thank you.
Australia?
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports and welcomes Working Paper 70 from New Zealand, which we think is highly relevant to many states around the world. In relation to Working Paper 73, we support the paper, but we just suggest that from a drafting perspective, it would seem a bit odd that the conference would be working with the ICAO expert group. So I just think that's I'm sure the Secretariat can sort out that intro, and similarly with C, the conference agreeing to work with agencies, regions. I do wonder whether in fact that ICAO regions mightn't be ICAO PERGs, but that might be something the Secretariat has to think about. And in relation to Working Paper 236 from Korea, I've heard the comments from our Cancer colleague. I think it's a drafting issue with that recommendation. I just think there might just be a little bit of clarification required. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Australia. And with this intervention, we would break for coffee, which is sponsored by Frequentis, and just ask that we, sorry. Who is it? Who is it? I don't know. Can you raise it?
There we go. The last one that came out
Yeah.
of Portugal.
Is this Portugal?
No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Working Paper 70 presented by New Zealand, Portugal would like to state that we consider...
Okay, sorry, Portugal?
Already. In regards to Working Paper 70 presented by New Zealand, Portugal would like to state that we consider that recommendation A is not supported by a rationale provided in the notion of, and I quote, minimum essential standards for international interoperability is not explained, and it is not clear how this is different from the principles laid down in the mandate the Air Navigation Commission's Information Management Panel has to develop SWIM provisions and guidance, and which is in execution mode. The adoption of this part of the recommendation is discouraged without having a further and better understanding of what minimum essential standards for international interoperability are, how this is different from SWIM provisions, and what problem it will solve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Portugal, and sorry for that confusion. I was just saying we were going to break for coffee and then continue the discussions after the coffee break. So so we ask that you come back promptly at the end of the coffee break, and we will continue with several more interventions. Thank you.